Hi, everyone. Today I am excited to have Dr. Karen Robol with us, and she's going to talk about faithful learning for globally mobile families. What does that mean? Dr. Karen Robol is an educator, administrator, author, and a consultant with extensive experience in international education and working with globally mobile family. Her early career included work as a teacher and administrator in international Christian schools, followed by service as a worldwide children's education coordinator for global non-governmental agencies. She has reside in Spain, Pennsylvania, and Costa Rica, and speaks fluently Spanish. And she's also top of that, she also is an author of a globally mobile family guide to educating children overseas, and we'll talk more about that, and you'll get details on how to access that. In that book, she joins her professional and personal experience with serious search research to provide this essential guide for international families. So let's invite Dr. Karen into our broadcast, and she's going to share a little bit about her and what does this look like. Hi, Dr. Karen. Thank you so much for joining us. We are so excited to have you, and the wealth of knowledge and experience you're going to provide is going to help a lot of families out there with this some of these challenges that we're talking about today.
Hi, Jen. Nice to be with you.
Thank you. Thank you. So tell us a little bit about you. And I know I did a quick introduction, but love to hear more intense on why this topic and what makes, what sets you apart and how did you get into this?
Great. So we lived overseas as a family for about 20 years. Our children went to international Christian schools. And in my work with globally mobile families, I got to help families who were trying to discern, okay, how do I educate my children overseas? Because, of course, if you're moving overseas, it's not like your homeland. In your homeland, you know what to expect and what the options are. But going overseas is a whole new ball game. And international Christian education is certainly one of the helpful options for Christian families who are living internationally.
That is awesome. And so you worked it internationally, and and I know we're going to talk a little bit more about it. I want to hear about, some of the things that you guys got into. What does this look like? So yeah, go ahead and share us your expertise on, what does international school look like, and what does that have to offer families out there?
Great. Maybe we could even start for your listeners who aren't really familiar, like how big of an issue is this? Who lives overseas? So, as an example, American Citizens Abroad estimates that there are 5.1 million US citizens living abroad in 2022. The
Mhm.
Federal Voting Assistant Program puts that at 4.4 million based on the US Census, but
Wow.
that's hard to know because only the military is counted in the census.
Mm.
And that's just US citizens abroad, so they're Canadian citizens abroad and UK citizens, etc.
Right.
So a lot of people, and of those, the Federal Voting Assistance Program estimates there are at least 1.6 children under age 18 living internationally with their parents. So there are a lot of people involved in this globally mobile life.
That that
So
that is large number. To be honest, I didn't know it was this big of a number. I knew there was, off and on, but that's a large number to definitely well needed kind of service for them. Yeah.
yeah. So that's the focus of my book, The Globally Mobile Family's Guide to Educating Children Overseas. And
Right.
in it, I look at various options that are available for families and talk about the pros as well as some of the challenges and things to consider. But
Mhm.
particularly given the audience of your podcast of people who are interested in Christian education, I
Mhm.
wanted to talk about International Christian School, which is a common choice
Mhm.
among globally mobile Christian families.
Mhm.
The schools where we served, we were at a school in Madrid, Spain. We were
Mhm.
at a school in Caracas, Venezuela. And
Mhm.
both of those schools were places that were training in a biblical worldview, teaching Christian values, teaching Bible as a subject, and
Mhm.
trying to nurture and train children in the Christian faith. The Association of Christian Schools International, one of the leading organizations here in the US, has 112 accredited Christian schools outside the United States. And there are even more that aren't yet accreditation. And accredited matters, especially for transfer and college admissions. But
Mhm,
the whole
mhm,
pros and cons of accreditation would be like a whole nother podcast, so I won't go deeply there. But
mhm.
more than 100 schools internationally, Christian schools for globally mobile families.
That is awesome, because I can imagine, like, now, so our family itself, we're thinking about mission works and what does mission work look like, even to Africa and other third world country. But one of the concerns is that, well, we have young children. How do we make that work with young children and going on a mission world? And can we trust their education? Are they going to teach the similar things that are based at home? Is all the same similar questions as you're locally looking for Christian education, but this is almost another dimension, because now it's a different culture and a different language as well, right? So the anxiety and the overwhelming stress on that could itself be a lot. So love what you're doing.
You're right. So it's absolutely, when you're moving overseas, often the employee, whether it's the dad being transferred with a company or the mom being assigned with the military or whatever it is, the
Mhm.
employee is thinking about the job, but both parents are thinking, okay, what about our kids? How are
Exactly.
they going to be educated? How are they going to adjust? And in some places, the local host country schools are a good option.
Hmm.
But as you pointed out, it's a different language, it's a different culture, and there are different values, not necessarily better or worse, but different cultural values.
Hmm.
So there are a lot of things to consider. So international Christian schools actually started out, without getting into a long history, but back in the day when missionaries used to send their kids back to the homeland, like they'd send them back to England for years. The idea was, wait, we can board them here in our country.
Right.
I know boarding has a bad name. And
Mhm.
then over time, instead of boarding, we're now able to have international Christian schools in many major cities all around the world. And this is a great resource for Christian families who are living internationally. So
That's
attending an international Christian school helps. What are some advantages? Well, it provides a faith-based education that supports the family's beliefs. And your viewers are people who are interested in international or in Christian education, and so they're looking for something like that. The
Mhm.
international Christian schools provide a relative ease of transitioning between schools if the families move.
Mhm.
Now, missionaries tend to stay in one place a longer time, but diplomats,
Mhm.
military people, even business people are regularly moved around. So
Right.
moving from international school to international school
Yeah.
can be a relatively easy transition.
Right. Right. Right.
And the education in an international Christian school is likely to be like your homeland, or if it's not like it, it will have some credibility. So, what do I mean by that? We don't want to assume that everybody's North American in the schools.
Mhm.
So, most of the international Christian schools tend to follow a US model, some use a UK model.
Mhm.
But most of these schools also have international credibility. They follow the International Baccalaureate Program or
Okay.
the Advanced Placement Program, or they administer the British IGCSE test. So there are things that help provide international credibility.
Nice.
Also, often English is the language of instruction. There are some international schools that use other language, but by and large, English is the language. So if you are from the US or Canada, for example, that will tend to be a plus, as it is also for UK, Australia, New Zealander families, for
I
example.
have a quick question on that one, Dr. Karen. So let's just say my children has been in the North American schools, in the Christian schools and public schools. Now, how do they take that? Let's just say they're in transition. Let's say they're in grade six, they're going to go to grade seven. Sometimes we also hear that these international educations are even sometimes even higher, or sometimes they're lower, depending on the subject and all of that. How do they evaluate that to say, hey, you know what? Yes, now your child is this. Now he's going to go to this grade. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, um, certainly, if you're transitioning from a school in North America
Right.
to an English language school that has a US based or North American based curriculum, it's a pretty straightforward transfer.
Okay.
But many of the schools do test students coming in just to get a sense of where their level is.
Okay.
Because you're right, different
Mhm.
schools and different curricula emphasize different things at different points in time. And
Right.
that's even true if you move within your home country. You may find that
Exactly.
your student has studied something, but the students where you're moving have not studied that yet, or the students where you're moving have studied something that you haven't gotten to yet. So sometimes there are, I hate to call them gaps, but differences in what's learned. But the schools are pretty good. They're used to a level of transience of
Right.
families moving in and out. And so they have ways of evaluating and checking on that. Yeah.
That is awesome. That's good to know as well, because that's some of the probably key things that they're going to try to look at. And as a parent, or even as a a principal who's maybe hand holding a family who's moving to international, one of the things that they might be first thing is that, like, is there emotional support, or like that the kid is also kind of have to have the change, and he or she's just tagging along because the parents are have to do this because of their job or whatever it is, and they might be like, oh, this is unfair, I don't want to go to some other country where I don't understand the language. Does these schools offer any kind of support system to these kids as they transition into this new lifestyle?
Yeah, they absolutely do. They are aware of that. In fact, right now I'm watching acquaintances of mine with 4 children who have just moved to Africa.
Oh, wow.
And the oldest is in high school, and the youngest is in primary school.
Okay.
And it's been interesting to read their letters. I mean, they've just barely arrived, and they were facing some culture shock. And I said, okay, when school starts
Right.
in a couple weeks, that's going to be a big help, because then you start to make friends.
Yeah.
You have teachers who are familiar with the transitions and the adjustments, and the schools generally have counselors and others who can come alongside. It's a huge adjustment. And by the way, I would say for a family that's moving, like the example I just mentioned with a high schooler, in my experience, and I can't support this with research, this is just my experience,
Mhm.
that if the oldest child in the family is on board, says, okay, this is going to be an adventure, we can do this, it's okay, the other siblings will tend to follow along. But if the oldest child is like, are you kidding me, I don't want to move, kind of resistant, then it can be much harder all the way around. And back in the day, like, our children were small when we went overseas. The oldest was 2.5, and the youngest was a baby. And that's very different than like my
Right.
friends who just took 4 children from primary school through secondary school overseas. So you're right that you do need to provide emotional and social support and be aware of the needs of the children as they're adjusting. And these international schools do a great job of helping with that.
Well, that's kind of a good relief, and good to hear that as well, because that's some of the things that we need to consider. And I like your point on how when the older an observation on how when the older kid is on board, the rest of them follow suit. It is kind of traditionally even how in humankind how we work as well, right? If the popular kid is kind of on suit, then the other kids are okay. You know what? I guess this is what it is, and we'll follow suit, right? More reason why we need to impact more people with Christ-centered education.
That's
Right.
right. That's right. And that helps in international Christian school, just the whole Christian ethos of the school.
Mhm.
The teachers and everyone who works at international Christian schools are committed to
Right.
the welfare of the whole child, to their whole being. And so you get that nurturing, supportive environment that's really helpful, especially for families who are making a major transition like this.
That is awesome to hear. And you know we hear a lot of thank you for sharing all the benefits, and this is really amazing, but I'm sure there's some other challenges that we probably haven't chatted yet as well. Love to hear some of the common challenges that you are seeing that parents or families are experiencing, that and how do we work around those challenges as
Yeah.
well.
So I would highlight a couple things. So the cost may be high. So
Mhm.
international Christian schools try to balance their cost,
Okay.
but it can be expensive, and it
Mhm.
depends on who has sent you and what your package is, so to speak. So if you're with a business, in most cases, businesses will not hesitate and they'll pay the school bill. They just see that as part of doing business. But for instance, if you're a missionary raising support, You may have to raise money towards the cost of your kids' education. So finances can be a challenge if you're used to going to if you're used to paying for a Christian school in the homeland, you'll understand budgeting for Christian education internationally. That's one challenge. Another challenge is that if you're in an international Christian school studying, for example, in English, it could limit your interaction with the host country language. And I think it's a shame for someone to live in a country and not have interaction with host country nationals. So you have to think about, okay, how can we learn the language, especially if we're going to be there for a while? I'm thankful my own children learned Spanish, even though they attended international Christian school, but that was because the international Christian school taught Spanish. Also, we lived in the community and attended a local church, and because the other kids popularly among them spoke Spanish. And so there were ways our kids learned Spanish. Their Spanish is beautiful. A challenge also, if you're in the international school, can be that you live in kind of an expatriate bubble. And so you may not have friends from the host culture, although you're going to have friends from a lot of countries, because usually at international schools, they come from all over. And possibly the school may not have the resources to provide for special educational needs. It depends on the size of the school and their resources. The larger ones definitely do, but if it's a small startup kind of school, they may not have all those resources. So if you have a child with special educational needs and you're looking at moving internationally, you probably want to look into that well in advance and find out what's there. But overall, a great option for Christian families living overseas.
Love that. Thank you so much for covering that, because I think I'm glad you talked about even the special needs, because that's also, I feel like it's almost becoming a more of a dominant need that even in other Christian educations that we're seeing even in North America, because of lifestyle changes and the things that our culture we're introducing into from digital world and all of that. So I think that's definitely something a parent should definitely look into when we are looking at international schools. I also, now maybe we pivot a little bit and kind of talk about, your teacher right now, they're looking at, or their headmaster and their teachers looking to move international because of their spouse or whoever it is there, what kind of opportunities are there for teachers out there for if they want to teach internationally?
Now, there are a lot of opportunities. And so whether you're moving because a spouse is moving or just because you want to do something different or have a new experience, every year, international Christian schools recruit teachers for a variety of roles. And some of the schools are still recruiting for urgent needs for this upcoming school year. In some of these roles, you're paid a full salary. In other places, you have to get donations for your support, what we call raising support. Others, it's a combination, so it varies by school. But it's a great opportunity to get to live internationally and support kingdom work by teaching. The Association of Christian Schools this year will hold a job fair. And so if any of your viewers are interested in learning, they can go to the website you've posted. There will be a job fair tour in November that will be held at Liberty University, Dallas Baptist University, and Grand Canyon University. And they're also doing a virtual job fair. So great way to learn about all the opportunities and openings at international Christian schools. There are many, and they're all over the world.
That is awesome. And just for curiosity reason, do you find that most of these jobs from international teachers are mostly young people who are taking it on, or is it kind of balanced? Is it pretty balanced between the families who are married with children, or is it just singles who are taking on these kind of roles?
That's a great question. And so definitely a lot of younger singles, I don't have a house, I don't have all these things to tie me down, I'm going to head out. Yes, people do that.
Right.
But for instance, my friends I just mentioned, they are well established, they have a family, and they're going to do something different for a period of time. We've also seen retirees. You can retire from public schools, at least where I live, often in your mid-50s. If you have enough years in the system, you're still young, you still have energy. And so we've seen retirees go out. So actually, it's an opportunity for all ages to contribute to kingdom work through international Christian education. Some people make a career out of it, either staying at one school. Some of the colleagues we served with in Spain 25 years ago are still there. Others move around every couple of years. So there are different models, and some do it for a few years and then return to their homeland.
Nice.
So lots of opportunities regardless of where you are in your life.
Oh, I love that. And and that's for even in faith-based families who are looking for opportunities in international. I guess these are some of the options as well, right?
That's right.
Any other options you can talk about?
Other options for educators, you mean? Or
No, just in generally faith-based families who are interested in broader, like they want to see this international school going to the next level and making this more available. So it might be like, okay, you know what, I am done, but I'm looking to places that I can invest in or even
I
look at. So how can I impact Christian education internationally? What does that look like for them?
Okay, great. I'm sorry I misunderstood. But yeah, absolutely. There are opportunities. Certainly, you can pray for the international Christian
Mhm.
schools. They support other Christian families, missionaries, and other people. They also reach people who might otherwise be difficult to reach. Some of the schools focus intentionally on being open in their enrollment to taking anyone, and they can reach people, levels of society that you might not otherwise be able to reach as a traditional missionary. And so it's a great opportunity for outreach and support. And so pray for Christian schools as they do that. And then for people with means, and you don't even have to be wealthy, schools always have projects. So you could give towards the support of an individual teacher or help provide needed items for an international Christian school. Most of the schools will either, if they don't have projects listed on their website, all it would take would be an email to find out what might be on their wish list or things that would be helpful to them to have. Some Christian schools even have service opportunities for teams or individuals. For example, there's a school in the Dominican Republic called the Doulos Discovery School, and they have a full program to prepare and receive mission teams from churches to come and assist at the school and get to see the work in the Dominican Republic. It's a remarkable program that I recommend. And that's just one example of opportunities to serve international Christian schools without making a long-term residential commitment.
I love that. Actually, that hit home for me because we just went end of April, beginning of May to Dominican Republic on a mission trip with my son because the schools from here goes there and they build a house and then they go to the community of the slum of the slum and kind of see what they can do to help out. And then I met a couple of families who just given up very nice living lifestyle in North America and moved their family there and living with the people and serving them. So it's great to see that there's support for those kind of families who are selflessly giving themselves of that to that kind of mission work.
That's right. Absolutely.
That's awesome. Karen, this is awesome. Dr. Karen, thank you for coming. And we were so blessed by what you're doing. Thank you for what you're doing because it's very well needed. And I love to get more information about your book, at least give our audience more information on the book that you have authored. And how can, how much more information would they find in that book and who would be an ideal person to read that?
Right. So the book is called The Globally Mobile Family's Guide to Educating Children Overseas. So definitely anyone who's thinking about moving overseas needs to get a copy. In the book, I go through first some introductory things of how to identify your values and figure out what you're looking for. And then the various options that are used with the positives, potential challenges, and other considerations. So it just walks you right through all the different parts of considering the options for families living overseas. But also, who else might benefit? Well, people in churches. If you are a church missions coordinator on a church missions committee, you'll want to have that to make available to people in your congregation who are thinking about moving internationally. It's a great resource for families. So it's a small market of people who are moving overseas, but families who live overseas, it's really kind of an essential book to refer to.
I like that. I really like that. Thank you for all the work you did and giving even all of yourself to this, even this book that you wrote. Because, the book, at least, even if they cannot connect with you guys, they can at least get a glimpse of what that looks like and help them to think about things they probably never thought that, oh, they need to think about that. And you have input your research, your experience, and the work that you're coming from. And so that's amazing. I'm looking forward to letting more people know about this service. And if you are a headmaster at a school right now, or a principal, or a teacher, or even a parent, and you guys are interacting with anyone who's doing international schools or looking to move internationally, there is amazing support system like Dr. Karen's shared today about. Even her book would be a great start to start off with and see what where you can go from and start planning this. Because sometimes some of the things we say, okay, you know what, we're going to move internationally and then we will let God do what needs to be done, which is great. I'm a very big faith person, but I'm also big on planning as well, and understanding, and who are the moving pieces, and how do we make this transition as smooth as possible for everyone, not just one person or the dad or the mom, but for the whole family. How does that going to look like, right? So it's very important.
Absolutely.
Well,
Absolutely.
thank you so much, Dr. Karen, for coming and sharing your wealth of knowledge again. We're so happy. We hope that you can come back again and share more experience, maybe hear even more stories about for us. And we were really blessed. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you, Jen. It's been great too. I appreciate the privilege.
Awesome. Stay blessed, and we'll talk to you soon.